we have John deBary. He is a cocktail and bar expert with over a decade of experience working in award-winning New York City bars and restaurants. His original recipe was featured in the best-selling cocktail book called PDT, Please Don't Tell, which is a famous bar that he used to work at. He was a director for the Momofuku restaurant chain, who trained countless bartenders and servers, as well as opened 10 restaurants, each with their own unique bar program. He is the co-founder and president of the Restaurants Workers Community Foundation and strives to create experiences that will increase deliciousness and joy in the world while educating people so that they can do the same for themselves. And lastly, and most recently, he published his first book called Drink What You Want. I'm sure I'm missing something. I'd like to welcome John.
Hi. I don't think you are missing anything except for Proto, but I think it's the whole reason why we're here. So
yes. So I'd like to start up every interview by asking what road or roads led you to where you are today?
A very winding and unexpected road. I'm an extremely lucky person, and I was able to go to like a fancy college and kind of on this track to do like a lawyer academic job. And I just kind of randomly fell into bartending when I was out of college and looking for jobs, and found out that I was like really good at it and I liked doing it. And I liked the experience of like making something for someone and having them drink it, like, and having that experience happen in front of you, and the whole idea of hospitality and the selflessness of it. So it just spiraled from there, from behind the bar at PDT to Momofuku. And then when it came time to, write my own book and create my own drinks that, you could get on a shelf, it's a kind of a natural progression. But, it was not, on my, what I want to be when I grow up, 6th grade exercise. And I'm happy about that. So
that's great. So anyone that's listening that doesn't know, Proto is not a wine and it's not trying to be a wine. Do you mind elaborating on what it is then?
Yeah, so it's something that I kind of had struggles to define too, because the non-alcoholic category is so new, and there's some reference points with like spirits and beer and wine, but a lot of the really cool things that are happening are outside of those frames of reference. So for me, Proto it has a similar kind of function in someone's life like it would wine, like in terms of when you would drink it and the amount you're drinking, and the fact that it's perfect to drink right out of the bottle. All you need to do is chill it or add some ice. Like, it doesn't really require any mixing. But the flavor is completely different. The flavor has a lot of references in like Italian Amaro or like vermouth or different like aperitifs like Lillet or Campari, and there's even some with the Ludlow Red. It has a little bit of like a creme de cassis feeling with it, with the blackberry and the flowers. So it's, for lack of a better word, it's just a drink. But it's sort of as a dry word for the kind of complex experience that I hope people get from drinking.
Right. Well, you have such an extensive background in the cocktail and alcohol space. Why did you choose to make a non-alcoholic product?
It's something that's been on my mind for a long time. At PDT, all the cocktails had spirits in them or alcohol, and people came in and they weren't, if they weren't drinking alcohol, they usually just got something kind of uninspiring, like a bitters and soda. So I sort of started to think about like, maybe there are some recipes you can develop and using ingredients behind the bar. And then at Momofuku, I was in charge of cocktail programs, but then we started to do non-alcoholic cocktails like very, very seriously, and devoted space and attention to them. And we saw people who otherwise would just be getting water or like a Diet Coke or something kind of sad. Right. They were like, oh wow, I can finally have something that's like in the same kind of world as everybody else. So that just sort of tipped me off that, hospitality for me is about being accessible and having as many people as possible welcoming, feel welcome. So when it came time to create something that was, in a bottle, I had an idea about the way I wanted things to taste, and then it just felt almost really natural to me to try to do it without alcohol, because A, it's challenging technically, and B, like, if you want as many people as possible to enjoy something, then you remove as many barriers as you can.
Right. How do you recommend drinking it?
Chilled in a wine glass or an old fashioned glass with a little ice if you want. The spritz does really well with ice. The red is a little bit warmer, so it's a little bit. The ice is fine, but it's not where I would go. So it's really just great to just pour and go. Like you don't have to think about it too hard. And I see people making cocktails with it or mixing, spirits, champagne,
Right.
ginger ale. It's sort of, it is a good thing to play with. But for me, the ideal experience is just chilled and in a glass. Yeah.
Have you gotten a lot of positive feedback and in your following base?
Yeah. I think people, I think that there's a lot of latent demand for products that don't have alcohol in them, and not just for people who are, very, like more kind of structured in their non-drinking. I think a lot of people kind of just didn't realize that it was an option, or there really weren't that many options. So it just didn't occur to a lot of people. And
Right.
I think the last year and a half, a lot of people who, maybe they're not drinking for a month or for a day or for a year or whatever. They're just like, oh, wow, like I don't necessarily need to have alcohol in order for it to be a, culinarily legitimate experience. So just like kind of like opening people's eyes to things that they just weren't even really looking for is the coolest part. Just like, wow, I just had this amazing meal. I just, drank all these amazing things, and I can like go to a yoga class if I want to, so it's really about that, like activating people's imagination.
I know. We agree that more people need to know about these products. So that's why Better Rhodes is the thing. Where do you see the alcohol space going in the future?
Well, I mean, I think that with drinking in general, I think there was a trend of like, there was fancy wine and craft beer and then craft spirits and coffee and tea. And I think that the non-alcoholic category is kind of like the last, of those categories to get really like enhanced by a huge explosion of creativity. And so we're seeing now just like shops online or in person, or like brick and mortar shops, just like you can walk into somewhere or you can go onto a website and you like have like 40 options, and you're just like, wow, like like 2 years ago this was like unheard of, and now there's just more than what to do with. And so I think that the kind of, for me, the exciting innovative things are happening in non-alcoholic drinks, just because you are kind of free of a lot of the limitations and the like ingrained ways of thinking that you would for, say, like if you're trying to make a gin. I feel like we've been there, done that.
Right. I know some people debate on the statistics, but it's around 30 to 40% of eligible drinkers choose not to drink. And right now we're seeing that the alcohol-free space is so small, but it's been growing progressively over the past years because we're finally all coming together and realizing that there's not great alternatives.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely feels like one of those movements where there's like a tipping point of like people are interested and there's a response to it, and it just sort of builds and the feedback bubbles out and over, and it kind of becomes mainstream.
Right. What's your advice to someone who wants to elevate their bartending skills, but is not an expert like you?
Buy my book. It's kind of a self-serving answer, but a lot of like the main kind of lesson messages of my book are that it's like you don't really need to be that scared of failing and making something that isn't that great, because you can always just try again and it isn't that serious. So just like taking a playful, experimental approach to things. And I created a lot of probably undrinkable cocktails before I got to the point where I was able to make drinkable cocktails. And so much of success is moving on from failure. So just don't be shy, don't be afraid, and just try it. The worst you can do is like pour it out if it doesn't taste good.
Right. Okay. Final question. What is something about yourself that someone can't just Google?
I I have like I have not a secret pass, but it's not a Googleable thing. I worked for New York City. My first job out of college, I was working for New York City as an investigator for the Civilian Complaint Review Board, which investigated allegations of police misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of one of those things I didn't think about a lot, but this past year, be thinking about the structure of policing in our society and kind of the things that I saw and like the kind of function of the agency have kind of all come back to me after 15 years. So so that's a sort of interesting nugget where I got up at 6 a.m. and interviewed police officers in small rooms in Lower Manhattan, and I had a badge, and I would drive around and do like field work and survey and get video evidence, and it was a really interesting experience, but it's not something that that you can find online.
Okay, well, where can people buy your book?
The best place to go is just to search for Drink What You Want. And you can find the Penguin Random House website because they have links to like local booksellers and online indie bookstores, Amazon, obviously. You can go to my website, johndeBary.com, has everything and links to Proto and to Restaurant Workers Community Foundation. So yeah, maybe just go to my website and that's just your beginning. You can go from there.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Of course. Yeah.